There are many types of the synovial joints depending on the axis of movement of the joint. If the synovial joint has no axis of movement, it's plane type. Hinge and pivot are two types of the synovial joint, and they are uniaxial joints that moves on one axis. Also, we have bicondylar joint, ellipsoid joint, and saddle joint. They are a biaxial joints which act on two axes of movements. The last synovial joint is the ball and socket type, which is a multi-axial joint. A ball and socket joint is made up of a round end of one bone that fits into a small cup-like area of another bone. Let's explain these parts part by part. We will start with the uniaxial types. The first type is the hinge type. A hinge joint is a type of synovial joint that exists in the body and serves to allow motion primarily in one plane. It's made up of two or more bones with articular surfaces that are covered by hyaline cartilage and lubricated by synovial fluid. Elbow joint is a hinge joint that moves on one axis, either flexion or extension. The second type is the pivot joint. Pivot joints are uniaxial joints that permit rotatory movement of bones around a single axis. It's a synovial joint in which the ends of two bones connect. Pivot joint is located between C1 vertebra and C2 vertebra. The second type of the synovial joints are the biaxial joints. Biaxial or biplanar joints rotate in two axes, allowing movement in two planes. Saddle joint is one of them. Saddle joint is a biaxial and movable joint that allows movements on two planes, flexion or extension and abduction or adduction. This joint is mainly formed between the bones, whose articulating surfaces have both concave and convex regions. Carpo-metacarpal joint is an example of the saddle joint. The joint between the trapezium and the first metacarpal bone is a saddle joint. The second type of the biaxial joint is the ellipsoid joint. Ellipsoid joint is a biaxial joint that moves in two different axes. It allows movements in all angular motions. The movement of ellipsoid joints is in two planes, back and front, and side to side. These joints are present between the knuckle joints, wrist joints, metacarpophalangeal joints, and metatarsophalangeal joints of fingers. At the wrist joint, the lower end of the radius has a concave surface, which articulates with the convex surface of the carpal bones. The condylar joints. This joint type is biaxial, permitting movement in two axes: flexion, extension, abduction, and adduction. It consists of two separate convex surfaces, the condyles at the lower end of the femur, which articulate with two concave surfaces of the upper end on the tibia. Another type of the synovial joints is the multi-axial joint, ball and socket joint. A ball and socket joint is a synovial joint, which means it allows for smooth movements between bones. The end of one bone within the joint is spherical, forming the ball, while the end of the other bone within the joint contains a rounded depression, forming the socket. The hip joint and the shoulder joint are examples of the ball and socket joint. The last type of the synovial joints is the plane joint. There is another name of plane joints, the gliding joints. Gliding joints are also known as arthrodial or plane joints. These synovial joints enable limited gliding movements due to flat bone surfaces and tight joint capsules. Common examples include carpal joints in the wrist, tarsal joints in the ankle, and facet joints in the spine. This is the end of our lecture. We hope you enjoy it.